In the heart of Manhattan, a storm is brewing, and the music industry is about to be shaken to its core.
They were a powerhouse record label, but their dealings would make everything fall apart.
It was like a circus because it was just so crazy. So many things that was like, what happened?
The accusations involved creating shell companies, manipulating invoices, transferring funds through multiple accounts, and ties to organized crime.
A pair of music industry titans whose artists and music dominated the airways around the world would suddenly find themselves at a crossroads and their global music empire in an unsettling New York state of mind.
Legal troubles not only affected the founders, but every single artist at the label too.
At the time, I was working for MTV News, so I was covering everything closely.
There was a growing concern from the music industry and Irv that he was being targeted.
The case all tied back to Gotti's affiliation with the notorious drug lord, Kenneth Supreme McGriff.
Their rise to fame was undeniable, but behind the platinum records and celebrity collaborations lay a dark secret.
It was just people everywhere waiting for that verdict, and everyone is so scared.
This is the story of power, lofty ambition, and the price of fame. This is the story of Murder, Inc.
Known as the city that doesn't sleep, New York is also known for its bright neon lights, Broadway stars, and the ultimate hub of billion-dollar dreams.
It was beautiful and related to everyone. It was flashy and bigger than life.
New York hip-hop was lively and brimming with creativity and drama.
From the Bronx to Queens, Brooklyn to Manhattan, every inch of the island and city of New York produced some of the biggest industries and stars.
In the early 2000s, hip-hop exploded, with labels vying for dominance on the charts, the clubs, and on the radio.
The hip-hop scene was great. Working at Def Jam, every day was a different day. When you got up every morning, it was exciting to go to work.
Just as Def Jam was developing its stride with hits from artists like LL Cool J, the Beastie Boys, and Public Enemy, a new batch of super producers such as Irv Gotti burst onto the scene, churning out hit after hit after hit for the mogul Russell Simmons and his iconic label.
I worked at Def Jam for a while, like over 10 years, and we had like small offices on Barrack Street. When Irv first came to Def Jam, he was a breath of fresh air because he brought a different type of energy.
Irv Gotti's vision was to rival the industry giants with raw talent and real street stories, making it a go-to label for authentic hip-hop.
At a certain point, Murder, Inc. was one of the focal points of not just hip-hop music, but of all the music. Like the music was crossing over.
Irv had a great ear for creating epic collaborations, pairing top-tier artists to produce unforgettable smash hits like Ja Rule, Ashanti, and Lloyd. He broke new ground by blending street rappers with R&B singers, a game-changing move that was new for that era.
They started making millions at an extremely fast rate. They knew how to keep the hits coming.
As the budding music and hip-hop scene continued to evolve, a shift in leadership was also created, producing a new wave of fresh and diverse executives determined to create sounds and music that was for us, by us. But as jobs were created for more people of color, the mantra of more money, more problems became true as well.
Founded in 1999, Murder, Inc. Records stormed the charts with Irv Gotti's raw, authentic hip-hop vision.
In New York, Lepke, gangster boss of Murder Incorporated, leaves federal jail for Sing Sing's death house.
Murder, Inc. got its notorious name when Gotti was inspired by a documentary about old-school gangsters he saw on TV. The original Murder, Inc. was a ruthless gang of professional hitmen who'd stole money from New York mob bosses.
Under the impressive influence of Irv Gotti, Murder, Inc.'s music reshapes the hip-hop landscape, connecting with listeners worldwide and inspiring a whole new generation of artists to follow.
Yet, whispers of criminal activity circulated early on when the media and law enforcement began scrutinizing the label.
We had got inside information from someone who said that the feds was looking at Murder, Inc. of course you're going to brush it off because there's no need for you to think about something that's untrue.
Irv and Chris's rapid rise sparked jealousy and tensions in the music industry, pitting them against other and more established labels in fierce rivalries and conflicts.
The streets were definitely talking. One of the most vocal was 50 Cent. 50 never believed the tough guy image that he saw in the videos or heard on the songs, especially when Ja was screaming murder.
As Irv and the label were winning awards and climbing the charts, bitter rivalries were closing in.
A headline-worthy feud erupted between 50 Cent versus Ja Rule and the Gotti Brothers, adding layers of drama to the label's already controversial image.
So when it came to that particular situation, back in the days we would say it's on wax, but it turned into more, physical.
The feud kept escalating, which led to an argument and physical altercation in Atlanta. That dramatic confrontation would keep the rap beef ignited.
I've never known 50 to lie, and I've never known Irv to lie. Sometimes their stories about each other are conflicting, but for the most part, since I've known them, they both been truth tellers.
This is no longer about who's better than who. This is personal. And I think with that going on, it created just some negative energy. I think that became like the real issue.
The question on everyone's mind was, what sparked the notorious feud between rapper 50 Cent and the Murder Inc. artist Ja Rule? And more importantly, did the lyrics from their songs fuel something even more sinister than music?
Irv was from the hood. He positioned himself as a mob boss with the label filled with murderers. He brought his street ties to the label, which caused the authorities to think that he was connected to one of the biggest drug dealers in New York.
As the battle escalated, dark secrets emerged, exposing Irv, Chris, and Murder Inc.'s ties to a drug lord and plunging them into a vortex of legal troubles. Despite the stable of multi-platinum artists, the Def Jam subsidiary found itself under scrutiny for its alleged involvement with known drug lord Kenneth Supreme McGriff.
Word on the street was that Kenneth Supreme McGriff was arrested after a thorough joint investigation by state and federal authorities. He was in and out of jail until the early 90s. He reconnected with his friends Irv and Chris Gotti, who are now running the Murder Inc. label under Def Jam. The Gotti brothers introduced him to Ja Rule, and they started doing business together.
Speculations of money laundering and ties to organized crime swirled around the label, painting a picture that they were involved in more than just making hits.
Irv brought his street ties to the label, which caused the authorities to think that he was connected to one of the biggest drug dealers in New York.
Irv and Supreme were friends. They were just legit friends.
Meanwhile, 50 Cent is beefing with Ja Rule, and also had a close street affiliation with Supreme that ultimately just intensified things between the rappers even more.
There was a couple of altercations that happened that actually just, kept escalating the situation.
When 50 Cent's G-Unit crew clashed with Murder Inc. at the Hit Factory Studios in New York City, the tension erupted into violence. Ja Rule, he got tipped off that 50 was recording there, paid an unexpected visit, leading to a dramatic confrontation.
And it was really intriguing to me, the whole connection between Supreme and Murder Inc. Now that I'm a professional, 20 years later, his name is still ringing out in the streets. He had longevity.
Supreme and the Murder Inc. crew found out that 50 Cent's song was used in the court documents against him. Kenneth didn't feel like it was an homage. He was in deep water with the FBI for his drug trafficking organization, and all of these pieces of evidence were used in the case to take down Supreme as a leading drug lord of New York.
And after months of probing and piecing together enough evidence to secure a warrant, in early January of 2003, federal agents raided Murder Inc.'s office, searching for proof of the alleged connections between Kenneth Supreme McGriff and the Murder Inc. label execs.
This is like something that was unheard of. And then the charges started coming down. Irv was a lot of things, like I didn't feel like he was stupid enough to do some of the things that the feds were saying that he was doing.
So the offices got raided. So yeah, it was like a red flag. And of course, Def Jam, I think, were taking the approach, you know, of like, wait a minute, like what's happening? Because Murder Inc.'s offices was in Def Jam's building.
Because of his professed innocence and the alleged case of profiling, Irv and his team at Murder Inc. continued business as usual.
Murder Inc. initially shrugged off accusations, prioritizing their music and achievements, leaning on their fan base to overshadow any negative attention.
As the investigation heated up, Murder Inc. took a lot of hits throughout the infrastructure of their business and their music.
Murder Inc.'s operations were profoundly impacted by allegations, with constant media attention and legal pressures disrupting their business relationships and stability.
Once that raid happened, that changed the whole game for Murder Inc. It's one thing to be running around in the streets and getting bad publicity on certain things, or to be involved in a hip-hop beef with another artist, but when you have the feds raining down, that just doesn't work for business.
They never admitted to a single claim. Business never stopped at the Inc., even with over 50 government agencies raiding their label's office since early 2003. They kept it business as usual.
The federal probe into Murder Inc. ignited when law enforcement flagged suspicious financial transactions connected to the label, prompting a comprehensive investigation involving heavyweight agencies like the FBI and IRS.
And with the feds, and now the IRS sifting through every aspect of Irv and his label's business affairs, artists at the label began to wonder how and if their careers could sustain such a devastating blow.
The allegations and investigation inflicted heavy stress and public scrutiny on both Irv and Chris Gotti, straining personal lives and relationships as they battled to clear their names.
The entire label and their artists looked bad. And on top of that, the label was losing millions trying to fight their cases. They lost so much money, they couldn't even afford to record new music videos or sustain the careers of their artists.
Now I understand when I see certain situations and cases, I don't just jump to what media is saying about people, because I experienced it myself personally. When they say this person did this and this person did that. Murder Inc. was accused and was so far from the truth.
And with the truth being presented in such a quiet manner, while the accusations against Irv Gotti were so loud, Murder Inc. went from producing hits to taking a major one.
The fallout was substantial, with contracts scrapped, partnerships dissolved, and the label's future thrown into uncertainty.
With all the legal troubles and the decline of all their top artists, Murder Inc. looked like it was dying in the industry. And most of their leading artists fell off because of it.
With the brothers facing unthinkable felony charges and their label and artist relationships in jeopardy, Irv had some hard decisions to make. Maintain their innocence and loyalty to their fans and friends, namely Kenneth Supreme McGriff, or take their chances in court with hopes that the truth would prevail.
There was no validity, no truth to it at all. But everybody had to go through the process. Irv and Chris still had to go through a trial and face 20 years for something that was literally made up, which was crazy to me.
In the wake of a much larger investigation against New York drug lord and kingpin Kenneth Supreme McGriff, authorities profiled music moguls Irv and Chris Gotti, claiming the Murder Inc. label execs conspired to launder millions of dollars through their record label for McGriff and his legendary Supreme Team drug empire.
As the night of November 1st unfolds, federal agents are meticulously piecing together the final parts of a complex puzzle. For months, they've been investigating the Gotti brothers, tracking financial records, phone logs, and gathering evidence of what would be considered one of the biggest money laundering schemes of all times.
The government had long suspected Kenneth McGriff of orchestrating a deep-running drug trafficking ring, and now they aim to indict him to keep him from further poisoning New York City's communities.
They launder the drug trafficking operations of McGriff Enterprise through their Murder Inc. record label.
Even though it was reported that the friendship between Irv and Supreme was strictly on the up and up, authorities operated from the notion that birds of a feather flock together. despite actual facts to support any contradictory claims.
They all came together like the Avengers. The charges stem from a coordinated effort by federal and law enforcement agencies.
The allegations against Murder, Inc. reverberated across the music industry, sparking questions about label integrity.
Authorities claimed that they were locked in with one of the biggest drug lords in the city and created a drug enterprise.
The indictment alleges that members of McGriff's drug enterprise collaborated with Murder, Inc. executives and employees to launder the proceeds from drug trafficking through the music label.
Media outlets provided extensive sensationalized coverage.
There were a lot of crazy stories and accusations. The label was crumbling and their artists were falling off horribly.
Dominant narratives included the rise and fall of a powerful music label, alleged connections to organized crime, and personal stories of those involved, highlighting the contrast between the label's success and its legal troubles. They provided in-depth knowledge of financial systems, money laundering techniques, and criminal networks, clarifying how the alleged schemes operated.
Now, everyone counted Murder, Inc. out, right? So now it's almost like being tainted. And then also you got to think about the people who failed you. You know what I mean? Because there are people who failed you because it's like, oh, nah, y'all over there, let me step away. And now what happens? So now you're trying to, it's almost like starting from scratch, but now you're starting from scratch with a stain on you.
And with the buzzing rumors and innuendos about the pending allegations about the Supreme Team and the Gotti Brothers, investigators turned their attention to a new street narrative involving rapper 50 Cent and some of the lyrics in his songs.
The label was going down all around. Ja's beef with 50 exploded, with 50 dragging Ja and Murder, Inc.'s name through the mud on hit tracks.
This also ties back to when 50 Cent was shot 9 times. Word on the street was that Kenneth Supreme McGriff was the one who did it. There were a ton of receipts to show for it.
Gotti and Murder, Inc. refused to accept the smoke. Their lawyers were certain that they had done nothing illegal and that their business was legitimate.
The investigation uncovered that upon McGriff's release from prison, he re-established a sprawling criminal organization with new members.
The Gotti Brothers issued public statements asserting their innocence, continued producing music to signal business as usual, and employed legal teams to manage the fallout and fight the charges.
Friends, family, and even fans wondered if public statements were going to be enough. With the feds and the IRS ready to arrest and indict Irv and Chris Gotti, the duo decided to do investigators one better and voluntarily turn themselves in.
Agents posed as insiders to the label to gather first-hand information, capturing critical interactions and transactions to build a strong case.
There was an individual who worked at Murder, Inc. And I believe he was an intern. Later on, we find out that that person became, I guess, the key witness. Now, once the investigation is going on, Irv and Chris lawyers, of course, they hire private investigators as well. So just as Murder, Inc. is being investigated, we hire our investigators to investigate the people who's supposed to be key witnesses, you know, supposedly.
The empire they built is now under intense scrutiny and on the verge of crumbling fast. The fallout is immediate and far-reaching. The music industry is left reeling, while fans and artists alike grapple with the mind-blowing revelations. Murder, Inc., once a symbol of success.
आज अगर मैं ये बिजनेस नहीं कर रही होती तो मैं अभी जॉब्स अप्लाई कर रही होती या तो फिर मैं 9 to 5.
Murder, Inc., once a symbol of success, is now synonymous with crime and scandal.
Every single person that they interviewed said, oh, you should ask Darcel Lawrence. I was the head of joint ventures, so I lawyered up and got my own lawyer.
And threats from the federal government probe, indictment, and an arrest. On January 26, 2005, Murder, Inc. founders Irv Gotti and his brother Chris surrendered to authorities and geared up for the trial of a lifetime.
Expectations for the trial were high, anticipating a lengthy legal battle. The main federal indictment points detailed accusations of money laundering, conspiracy, and shell company use to hide illicit funds and described individual involvement.
The charges targeted Kenneth Supreme McGriff and 8 leaders, members, and associates of McGriff's enterprise, which of course included Irv Gotti, president of Murder Inc., and his brother Chris, the VP. Their indictment focused on racketeering, homicide, and drug distribution.
The indictment painted a vivid picture of how McGriff, along with others, allegedly used Murder Inc.'s offices as a hub for their illicit activities.
These indictments sent shockwaves through the hip-hop community, raising questions about the integrity and future of one of its most influential labels in music.
Irv, he was really paranoid and he was afraid, you know, rightfully so. By that point, the feds had taken just about everything away from him, and, you know, the final step was putting him in jail for the rest of his life. He was nervous, he was paranoid, he was shook.
Authorities believe that they were laundering more than $1 million in drug proceeds through their control of their rap music label and straight-to-video film.
Investigators dug further. For instance, McGriff allegedly financed a straight-to-video movie ironically titled Crime Partners with drug proceeds in 2000.
Murder Inc. was not involved in Supreme's movie.
The defense passionately argued that Irv and Chris Gotti were innocent. They portrayed the brothers as legitimate businessmen unfairly targeted due to their music industry prominence and childhood friendship with Supreme.
At the end of 2005, all eyes were on the Gotti brothers as they stepped into the courtroom. In their opening statements, the prosecution tried to establish evidence that linked Kenneth and Murder Inc. to illegal activities. Their intent was clear: to secure a conviction at any cost.
While the defense aimed to discredit witnesses, the prosecution highlighted inconsistencies.
The prosecution built a substantial case, presenting incriminating evidence such as text messages, as well as check receipts totaling $65,000 made out to McGriff's company.
There was no validity, no truth to it at all. But Irv and Chris still had to go through a trial and face 20 years for something that was literally made up, which was crazy to me. It was just a waste.
Witnesses testified to seeing or transporting bags of drug cash from McGriff to Murder Inc. offices, adding weight to the government's allegations.
So this individual who worked at Murder Inc., they were, quote unquote, the eyewitness to the crime of money laundering for Murder Inc. Since there was never any money laundering going on, the person just made up these stories, and I just consider him to be a scammer.
And with the brothers adamantly maintaining their innocence, the defense came out swinging in their opening statements, arguing that Murder Inc. was unfairly targeted and profiled, as so many young, successful men of color are.
The defense counter-argument claimed standard industry practices and questioned witness credibility.
In response, the defense team argued that Irving and Christopher were compulsive gamblers, which explained the presence of cash in the record label's offices.
Irv Gotti insisted he and legitimate investors financed the project without any illicit funds from Supreme.
He said that he had a lot of people lined up to testify on his behalf, but if you look at the trial, the defense really didn't call a lot of witnesses up. And Irv said that the reason why he did that is because he didn't want to bring a lot of people into that danger zone, so to speak.
The reality of it is, you have a jury who is ultimately making a decision about your life and your future. At the end of the day, I know what skin tone we are. Even though their attorneys did great, but it's these people, like this jury of people, like how do they see us? It was still always a doubt that they could lose.
Former employees and financial experts detail laundering operations, shaping the jury's understanding.
The day when we're sitting in the courtroom, so you know, everyone is so scared, it just seemed like that courtroom was just flooded with people. And then there was also people outside.
A lot of his friends in the industry, they stood tall and, you know, they came to this court to support Fat Joe, Jay-Z, Ashanti, even though They didn't get on the witness stand and testify. That was intentional by Irv. He didn't want to bring them further into the danger zone.
With the courtroom appearing like a hip-hop's who's who, tensions mounted as both sides presented their cases.
During the cross-examination, the feds and the prosecutors, they bringing out skeletons from their closet from back in the days. And
then you start learning certain things when information starts coming out. And then you start seeing people on the stand and you be like, who is that? You know, who is he? I don't even know him. You know, it was crazy. It was like a circus.
The conflicting narratives presented during the trial underscored the complexity of untangling criminal allegations within the hip-hop industry. The defense's alternative explanation raised questions about the reliability of witness testimony and highlighted the challenges of proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt in high-profile cases involving influential figures.
In a high-stakes courtroom showdown, the jury deliberated for days, holding the fate of the Gotti brothers and Murder, Inc. in their hands. With New York on edge, the beloved label's legacy hung in the balance, testing the very fabric of hip-hop.
Irv had enough powerful friends and powerful entities in the business world and the music industry where just their presence alone was signaling to the jurors that, you know, we believe in this guy and he's not alone.
Well, Irv and Chris has a very big supportive family. So every day it would be their family, it would be us, you know, friends, and us, the co-workers, you know, we all were there.
The jury took several days to reach a verdict.
Irv, he was prepared for whatever. Either way, he was prepared. It's either gonna be they free or they're not.
Despite Irv's self-proclaimed innocence from any of the alleged charges, he and his brother knew that their fate rested in the hands and thoughts of a jury that didn't necessarily look like them.
I was covering the trial, and I did honestly feel that the prosecution didn't do that great of a job as far as building up a case. But as we all know, as a black man in America, it's a crapshoot.
I'm praying, and then when the lawyers called and say they ready, so of course, you know, your heart just dropped. It's just like, oh God, oh God. And it was like no one was saying a word. And you could tell everybody was just in their own thoughts, right? And it was so somber. I know I was just shaking. I was just like this constantly.
In a nail-biting courtroom battle, Murder, Inc.'s legacy hung by a thread, facing the prospect of up to 20 years behind bars. The future and fate of the Gotti brothers and Murder, Inc. was uncertain.
The media went crazy. The Gotti brothers faced up to 2 decades behind bars.
Continued. The Gotti brothers awaited the fate of their freedom and the future of their label. And by December of 2005, after spending millions of dollars on their defense to fight what they believed to be a bogus case, the wait was over, as word spread that the jury had reached a verdict.
So, you know, everyone is so scared, we're so scared, and I'm just like, okay.
Irv was telling me that, you know, even during the trial, even before the verdict came in, just like in the weeks that the trial was going on, every single note that he would see being passed from the jurors to the judge, he was thinking like, oh my God, they sending the judge a note saying I'm guilty.
During the case, the Gotti brothers were offered several plea deals. They could have gotten probation. Irv was offered 6 months in jail as a lesser charge, but they refused every offer, calling BS.
Prosecutors leveraged plea deals for insider testimonies, presented compelling financial evidence, and highlighted the broader implications with charts and timelines to clearly illustrate the connection to criminal activities.
Tensions mounted as celebrities, friends, family, and fans awaited those 3 potentially life-changing words from the jury.
The jury found the Gotti brothers not guilty on the primary charges due to insufficient evidence. The judge carefully considered the severity of the charges and the arguments presented by both sides.
The attendance of celebrities such as Jay-Z, Damon Dash, Fat Joe, Ja Rule, and Ashanti at the trial had no influence on the jury's decision.
I think they did Irv first, and then saying everything's not guilty of, and then they had to come and say Chris. So it was like, wait a minute, is one going to be not guilty and one's going to be guilty? And then they got to Chris and they said not guilty, and it was like such a relief, right? And it's just like, oh my gosh.
The room exploded with joy. Irv was seen throwing his head back and mouthing thank you twice to the jurors, while his brother Chris stood beside him crying. The brothers and their parents even hugged two of the jury members, celebrating their hard-fought victory.
In the immediate wake of being found not guilty, it was a joyous celebration. We've seen the pictures and we've seen the videos where they're holding Irv up by his legs, and he looks like he just won the Super Bowl.
The bailiff came to Irv and said, one of the jurors want to speak to you. And she said, I watch your family, right, every day in a courtroom. She said, I just watched all the support. She said, and I know God has a plan for your life. And that very next Sunday, Irv went to church with her.
The public who believed in their innocence throughout the trial were extremely happy for them.
The Gotti brothers expressed relief and satisfaction. They emphasized their faith in the justice system, gratitude for support, and dedication to their music and business ventures.
But not everyone expressed a shared view of happiness after the not guilty verdict was read.
Public reaction was mixed, with some viewing the acquittal as a triumph of justice, while others questioned the strength of the evidence.
In this case, the government was completely wrong. They didn't have enough substantial evidence to prove the money laundering and Murder Inc.'s connection to Kenneth McGriff.
You know how they say, you know, men lie, women lie, but the numbers don't lie. The numbers never added up.
One of the 12 jurors informed the gathered media outside the courthouse that they did not find the prosecution's case convincing. Prosecutors Sean Haran and Carolyn Pokorny declined to comment on the verdict.
I never want to see a black man that has risen from such depths to such heights go to jail. You know, if I felt that he was innocent. Now, if I felt that Irv was guilty, I'd be like, damn. But I felt that the guys was innocent, and I was happy. You know, a lot of people in the hip-hop community was happy too. Like, we didn't want to see Irv go to jail.
After the case, McGriff faced the death penalty on charges of murder and racketeering. He stood accused of 2 drug-related homicides in Baltimore, Maryland, for the retaliatory killing of rapper Eric E. Moneybags Smith, along with numerous firearm and narcotics offenses.
Even after emerging victorious from the grueling legal battle and being acquitted of the felony charges against them, Irv Gotti and his label Murder Inc. faced a new set of troubles.
At that time, Ashanti separated herself from the label. Now it's like, what do we have? You know what I mean? You still got Ja, but then now we don't have a deal.
While avoiding prison, the Gotti brothers faced ongoing legal battles and reputation management. They shifted business strategies to focus on transparency and credibility.
Once everything was over and reality began to settle in a little bit more, they realized that, yeah, we did dodge a major bullet, but Murder Inc. still had a lot of problems. Like, they wasn't getting any funds from, you know, their parent company. Ja Rule, his studio album prior to the trial didn't do great, and his greatest hits album didn't do great.
Post-trial, artists faced uncertainty, seeking new ways to sustain their careers amidst the label's changes. They pursued new management, independent projects, and collaborations to maintain their presence in the music industry.
While relief swept through many circles, the industry buzzed with curiosity and skepticism about Murder Inc.'s future. After staggering financial losses and the decline of their artists during their grueling trial, whispers of doubt grew louder.
Irv gave up nights and nights of sleep and hours of time.
From the treacherous depths of scandal, Irv and his Murder Inc. label were left reeling with the residue of their deep-rooted ties between music, crime, and justice. And with the label's legacy stained with scandal, the future seemed uncertain for Irv, Murder Inc., and the entire hip-hop community.
From basking in monumental success, Murder Inc. fell all the way from grace. Their hits will always be timeless, but the label and their artists never quite recovered after the relentless legal scrutiny.
After the trial, Murder Inc. was really never the same. Ja Rule slowed down. Ashanti and Lloyd eventually left Murder Inc. I don't want to say the beginning of the end. They had some very, very good years, but their time on top, it was short.
Following their acquittal, many in the hip-hop communities see their case as an example of hip-hop profiling, where law enforcement and authorities unfairly target hip-hop artists and producers based on stereotypes. Their acquittal resonated deeply within the hip-hop community, sparking discussions about hip-hop profiling and the need for fair treatment of artists and producers.
The artists lost so much and their careers were basically shelved. Being dropped from Def Jam, lack of management, and the label's funding being tied up in legal issues pretty much stopped everything.
The hip-hop community discussed financial transparency and career protection in light of the trial, showing both support and caution toward the industry's legal landscape.
The Lorenzo brothers opted to rebrand Murder Inc., citing concerns about the negative implications of the company's name within the hip-hop industry.
During a press conference, Irv Gotti announced that in light of recent changes, setbacks, and controversy surrounding the label, Murder Inc. would be renamed to The Inc.
Is the limit.
Irv is right where he needs to be. He got money from his catalog, and now he's able to pursue some of his other dreams, which is television and film. And whenever they figure out the actual Murder Inc. TV series that he's been talking about for a few years, that's gonna be something that people are gonna tune into.
Murder Inc. Records, now known as The Inc., is remembered for its contribution to hip-hop and talented artists, despite the controversies. The label and its artists are celebrated for their timeless music and influence on the hip-hop culture.
I think what Murder Inc. did is they had such a great formula for making music. They was hitting us with so many just big hit records that was climbing the charts. Even the Grammys, they were confused at a certain point. They had to create a category, best rap song collaboration, because they didn't know, is this hip hop, is this R&B? Murder Inc. served as major inspiration for artists who came after them.
Music is Irv's passion. He feels that, you know, this is my culture. Like, and he literally really believes that he owns the culture of hip hop.